Hi everyone, welcome to the Car Chat podcast. And with us for the second time is Tim, Shmee150. Hello.
Hey, thank you. It's good to be back.
Yeah. Okay, really crazy coincidence. You may or may not have noticed this. I don't think you've noticed this. Is we recorded this a year ago. We recorded this exactly a year ago.
Was it
same time, same date?
You know what? I can believe it because it's the kind of time I would normally say that we should do exactly this kind of thing. But that is scary how quickly time flies. We were thinking about it as well. It's just insane how fast the last year has been, considering what's been going on.
Yeah, and I think when you were on last and we were talking about this, you had said, you were like, oh, it's okay, because we were just, I think we must have just gone into a national lockdown at that point in time for the first time. And you were like, oh, it's all right. I've got like 5 weeks worth of videos recorded.
Well, I managed, and guess what? I'm sat here in an isolation again myself with a few weeks of videos recorded. It's the way it goes.
Ideal. So what was, I mean, that whole process, how did you go about that from then on? Because presumably you have done a lot of videos in the interim of now. A lot, I imagine. I don't know. Have you managed one a day or close to?
Close to, more or less. I would guess between 12 months ago till now, probably about 250 videos or something. That kind of area.
So a large portion of that at the beginning was under sort of restrictions in the UK. Was that quite tricky to deal with?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, so this time last year, I had already shot, for example, my SLS Black Series being resprayed. So I had a whole series about that. And knowing what was coming, I'd already worked very hard to shoot things in advance. And as you say, it was about 5 weeks of content or so to see through the majority of that strange period. Obviously, the rules back then were that you could go to work if you couldn't work from home. So it was very much a case of doing as much work at home as possible. When it was no longer possible to work from home, to do things within the rules, within the regulations, etc. So I'd say it's always been a very peculiar one. But after about 2 months, we had a legal obligation to go over to Germany with the permission of the state, so to speak, to go to where we had our place in Germany. And that basically, for me, opened a lot of doors because Germany was much more open than the UK. Now, obviously, on a personal level, it was much more positive to be somewhere where you could do things in line with the rules. For example, days at the Nurburgring or visiting the German manufacturers. And it meant I had a lot of opportunity for filming some really cool stuff at a time when most people couldn't travel. So I basically managed to keep things going, took delivery of the M8, had most of my cars transported out to the Nürburgring at some point to go and do laps with. I think in the space of a couple of months, I had 8 of my different cars around the Nordschleife.
Nice.
Which was pretty awesome. And then past the year, kind of through right towards the end, and we got into, I think, came back to the UK basically in time for November. But as things started to go pear-shaped coming into mid-December again, it was kind of, well, a year prior, I'd spent a lot of money to arrange having a full US work visa. And so we were thinking, well, we'll go to the Middle East for a bit and then see what happens. And then when we left the UK to go to the Middle East, UK closed up again. And at that point, it was like, well, we're away. I've got my US visa. Let's hop on a plane to America. So we went to America for the last 3 months, which, strange turn. In the US, I was shooting a video a day throughout the whole thing. And, you know, the UK, I know there's a lot in the UK news about how the US has handled the pandemic, et cetera, et cetera. And there are certainly things that weren't done well. And there are certainly things that have been done better as well than the UK or different countries. Obviously, everywhere is very different. Cultures are different. People's behaviors are very different. But fundamentally speaking, being based in Miami and Florida with nice weather means that everything happens outdoors anyway. 1 or 2 events that put me off where there were far too many people around. But basically speaking, there's been a lot to keep things busy.
Yeah, that's pretty ideal. So go back a little bit in there. So you've spent a ton more time at the Nürburgring. I think a year ago, you'd still been visiting quite often, but weren't spending tons of time. So then you had an extended period of just sort of being in that region. Oh, how many laps have you done now? I feel like this is a figure you probably know.
Yeah, so up to this point a year ago, I can tell you it was about 33, 34. Now it's just over 100, and it seems silly to say, a whole season I did about 70 laps of the Nürburgring. You'd think it should be way more than that, but 70 laps of a, near on 10-minute lap, and obviously most laps you have to do very slowly when you're going out and when you're coming back in, so it does take a substantially longer amount of time, was actually a lot of driving there. You know, it's not nowhere near enough to be fully proficient, but enough to know my lefts and rights and to have confidence in a very fast car to put the foot down, which I think is exciting but also terrifying, because you're living in this world of, I'm starting to go at speeds where there isn't that much margin for error. And I know also it's going to be the first lap I do back after obviously having not driven there since it closed in November, that I need to be super conscious not to do anything silly, because that's where confidence and skill, you've got this balancing threshold, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Driving really, really slow stuff, when you start going off the track, you've still got like, okay, not that long, but it feels like a lot of minutes before you actually leave the track. Whereas...
Yeah, I can tell you even from my own experience, the difference between the GT8, which by most people's standards is still a fast car, it's 450 horsepower, the difference between that and the Senna is gigantic. When I drove the GT8 around, it was one of the last of my cars last summer that I did laps with. It felt like I was taking a walk in the park, having been going around in the Senna before, because everything goes by you so slowly, you can sort of take time to look around and take in the scenery. And like I say, that's still a fast car. That it's those margins, isn't it? It's the margins of 0 point whatever of a second and 3 times that amount of time, but that's a lot.
Yeah, and presumably car like the GTA got quite a lot of grip. What tyres is that on?
Sport Cup 2s.
Okay, so actually overall grip levels, ignoring some aero stuff, of like a Senna or a very fast McLaren versus the GTA, it's not tons more. So cornering speed, you could be somewhat, as long as you're not going really, really fast. Same sort of category.
I think the biggest difference probably to me is the braking. Because when you stamp on the anchors in the Senna on a set of warm tyres with its really fancy, excruciatingly expensive brakes, with its massive wing to stop you, braking happens so dramatically but so last minute that there isn't really any margin. You know, if you're slightly wrong, you're going... That I don't know, if you're braking from 200 or 250 kilometers an hour or whatever it is, that split second you're later, because you're braking right at the last moment to begin with, you're in trouble. Like there's nowhere else to go. Whereas maybe it's something else also, because of the GT8 being a manual car, you're just not on the limit quite as much. You know, you're not absolutely thumping like that in the same way. I think the dual clutch style computer game generation encourages you to be much more aggressive on the car.
Yeah, changing down and turning in, and then all on the gears, just boom, 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 boom.
It's more an emotional thing. Driving a car like the GT8 on the Nordschleife, much more like the sound, the feel. It's a challenge, and when you've driven a good lap, even if it's not the fastest lap, you feel like, that was epic. Yeah.
Have you driven it in a bunch of conditions now?
I've tended not to do too much driving in horrible weather.
Understandable.
It's a bit like being a fair weather skier, because it's kind of like, yes, you can drive and learn the wet lines. And I had a couple of interesting laps in the wet in a number of different cars. But for me, obviously, a lot of it is making videos. And while it's fun to drive a wet lap, it doesn't portray the same on a video, because there isn't the same sense of an engine hitting its red line or screaming, on the edge with the tyres squealing. It just looks slow and boring. Even though you feel like, well, there's some understeer, there's some oversteer, there's more understeer. Oh my God, I'm going to hit the barriers. The video doesn't carry that.
Yeah, absolutely. And the risk goes up significantly. Yes. I'm sure you feel like the risk goes up a ton.
So, I did some wet laps in the M8, but the M8 had BMW's MX drive, four-wheel drive. It's safe, it's stable. It's not a car I'm going to be pushing to the absolute max anyway. It's not a race car. It's a sporty Grand Tourer, very sporty Grand Tourer, but still it's a road car. So there's much more that feeling of this will probably end well. Whereas if you did it in the Senna, rear wheel drive, no weight on cold Trofeo R's, good luck. Good luck.
Yeah. I mean, I don't insure my race car in the dry when I'm on track.
Yeah.
But I often, if I'm racing, I would insure it in the wet, because it's just... For me, I know the chance of me coming off in the dry is, touch wood, or it's relatively low. A mistake is you might be a foot wider than intended. Mm-hmm. Whereas in the wet, a mistake, you could be facing a different direction. You could have gone through a wall. Like all these things happen where you just like the grip level is not what you think it's going to be or whatever. And that in a nice car on a racetrack is very expensive.
Yes. Yeah, no, I completely get that. So long story short, while it's fun to take a car around the Nurburgring when it is wet, it's a very serious reality check. You can't be overconfident. You can't be stupid because it's a countdown to disaster.
Yeah. It's when you want to be driving something cheaper and more replaceable.
Yeah, although I tell you what was quite interesting was I did a track walk as part of the Nürburgring's driving academy last August. I had a couple of days of full-on all day in my 675, which was great for learning. Doing 15 laps in a day is a brilliant way to kind of pick up how it actually works. But as part of the track walk, it was really interesting to experience how slippy, even in the dry, some parts of the surface are.
Oh, right.
Especially with the undulations and hills of the Nordschleife. Like you're walking and, it's slippy in places. And so as soon as you're on, with variable conditions and there's a wet surface, yeah.
Did you do it in a bus?
I did. And the buses kind of stop and you get out and you walk on different sections. It's great fun.
Yeah. That's interesting as well, because without walking or cycling or something and actually properly looking around, you wouldn't know that. There's no way you would know other than you finding out going when you think 100%. It's dry and it's not.
Yeah, and that was one of the crazy things. But also, and it's cliche to talk about it because everyone discusses the Nürburgring in this way, the fact that it has so many ups and downs. When you are physically walking up the hills or down them, that's when you really realize how dramatic it is.
Yeah.
Like computer games give you a bit of a sense, and then driving it gives you a bit more of a sense, but walking it is a different level. You're quite literally thinking, God, this is an exhausting hill to walk up, and I'm flying up it or flying up or down it in a car at whatever speed.
Yeah, and then you start to think, oh, actually, maybe I don't need to brake as hard as I think I am, because you get a lot of braking from the hill or whatever.
Yeah, exactly, and that makes a big difference. There are quite a few corners on the Nordschleife where you do need to be aware of what's coming up, to get early on the power. The long run that you have up out of Adenau Breitscheid is a big one. If you're not carrying the speed up out of the first tight corner to the right, you basically lose it on the uphill ascent, and it's a big, long upwards climb, which in a car like the Senna is easy, obviously, but in something slower, you need to plan that one out in advance.
Yeah, massively be aware. So you spent a bit of time in Germany. Oh, you had your Black Series down there.
Do you know what? The SLS Black Series was really, in many ways for my YouTube channel, if I can kind of talk about it like this way, it was a big part of the savior of my YouTube channel in 2020, when so many people obviously in my position were struggling with creating content. That car, which had been such a long anticipated car on my channel, I'd been talking about it for years, had this whole project building it up and, going to film videos of it being resprayed and changing the color of the wheels to silver and doing these kind of things. And yes, perhaps I made more videos about that topic than I would have done otherwise, but with an absence of other things really going on, there wasn't a huge amount else to keep busy with. But I then drove in that 5-month period with the SLS, I think 12,000 miles.
Ooh.
Which is absolutely absurd for an SLS Black Series. I think most of them will never probably less than 5% of SLS Black Series will ever do that much, let alone in 5 months.
Yeah.
But it did, it did everything. It did Nordschleife laps. It did daily driving, grand touring, took it down all the way across Europe multiple times. Obviously, eventually, Rentec tuned it, modified it, made it even noisier and angrier, and just made it into completely my own car. But it was really a car that I think is so both iconic and cool, whether it's the doors or the engine or what it stands for, or being AMG's first car, or that amazing Michael Schumacher advert years ago in the tunnel where it did that flipping U-turn over the roof. Everything about it just connected and was cool to share. And I had the big plans with it. I think you probably know that originally I actually bought the car and resprayed it with the intention of then flying it straight to the US to do Gumball and then do a tour in the US with it through the rest of the summer. But alas, that obviously all got shelved, but it gave me so many opportunities. And then obviously it was the same time the AMG GT Black Series was launched, so I got to take my SLS to the behind-the-scenes filming I did for the Mercedes video, and then also to the official launch of the car as well for the GT. So from a timing perspective, I must have filmed about 30 or 40 videos with the SLS because it just fit with everything. Because the timing for me could not have been more fortunate to have done it right then. And bizarrely as well, I bought the car in February last year. And the crazy thing now, looking around at the market, is cars like that have actually shot up in value during this time. A lot of people have sat down looking for... I can tell you right now, the cheapest SLS Black Series advertised in Europe right now, not a US spec. The US cars are slightly cheaper. The cheapest European spec car is 100,000 euros more than I paid.
Ooh, nice.
A year later. Which is, I mean, I have no intention of selling mine, but you do have to be aware for insurance value and, what the car is actually worth.
That's nice.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I also think it's a car of an era where a lot of people have sat down and said, actually, I missed out on that one. Those cars were genuinely rare, whereas, the GT Black Series, there'll be 2,000 of them. It's a completely different game now. No, I probably haven't helped the value of my car by respraying it, doing loads of miles, taking it to the Nurburgring, doing a top speed run in it. Who knows what else?
Oh, yeah, I don't know. I think you've done a lot for the value of your car personally, ignoring the mileage. I think it looks a lot better now than it did before. So it looked good before, but
no, it's a cool thing. I mean, I won't sell it. It's a huge part of my own, experiences, and the future is going to be very exciting as well when my GT Black Series arrives, which at the point of recording hasn't, but I presume by the point of publishing of this, it will have, which will be quite cool.
That'll be exciting. We'll talk about that in a sec. So with the SLS Black Series, that was like buying a car that you've wanted one of those for like a long time, but sort of put off because of various reasons or whatever. Do you think having now done that, you're like, oh, you might go that might sway future purchases?
Yeah, I think so. One of the biggest things for me personally that I enjoy about my car purchasing decisions, and obviously this is in quite a unique position given the type of content that I create about them, is the whole experience from when it begins, being part of the story of a car from when it's first launched to ordering it, building my spec for it, getting that first opportunity to drive it, eventually taking delivery, doing the first miles, building the memories with it, and ultimately cementing it a spot in my garage. Because both I enjoy that process and making a unique car, but also the content I make around the car, of course, as well along the way. But the SLS was really a departure from the norm for me because of buying a used car. It's the only car in my garage, I think I can say, that I wasn't the first owner of. Yeah, that's true. Out of the 15 cars, 14, 13, something cars, it's the only one that actually by the time of this video I think I might have bought by the time of this podcast I think I might have bought another one, but basically I tend to go for new cars because I enjoy that whole experience. And the SLS certainly, I think if you wait for something, and I'm sure you can relate to this in the same way I can. I'm familiar with what the prices of many of these cars were not all that long ago, and it commands a premium now. I could have bought that exact same car probably for 100,000 less a few years before. Yeah. Hindsight, right? Crystal ball. Wish we all had one. But that particular car, just having lusted after one for so long, was very satisfying to eventually purchase. I didn't say, hey, I want to buy one and just browse classifieds and buy one. It was, I'm going to wait and wait and wait. And then the right car came along and I kind of couldn't say no to it. I wasn't actually ready. And, when everything started going mad, we could say in March 2020, at that point, I was thinking, oh, this was a bad idea to buy a really expensive car right now. And being a car bought in Germany, I'd had to buy it cash, no finance or anything like that. So I was like, there's a lot of money tied up in one car. But like I said a few moments ago, that was when it turned out to be a blessing in disguise, that it gave me the ultimate, I think, ignition and interest. And so many of my audience were aware that I'd wanted an SLS Black Series for years. So it just fit. And Mercedes had actually teased and set me up for this a bit, because about 6 months before I bought it, I had been doing some filming with the Mercedes-Benz Museum. And while I was in Stuttgart for a couple of days, they said, here, have our SLS Black Series. See how you like it. So I had spent a few days doing a couple of 100 miles driving in one. And that, I think, had my eyes on the adverts, both in the UK and around Europe. And then, hey, along came this car. And I'm not sure if you know the story, but the car I bought and very much changed was actually a car I had filmed myself about 6 years before.
Oh, I didn't remember that.
So this is quite fun. I had filmed a video in a showroom where this very car had been sitting for sale back in 2014. So when it was about 3 or 4 months old at the time.
Yeah.
A friend of mine helped me connect the dots to work out that that was the same car up for sale again. And immediately I was just like, yeah, it has to be done. Because back then it was actually, I had just bought my first McLaren 12C, which was, a third of the price of an SLS Black Series based on the market values at the time. And I never would have thought that a car like that could be possible. I walked around it in the showroom being like, this is so cool.
Yeah.
SLS Black Series, I love it. Never did I think that that car would one day be in my garage. But hey, it's the exact same one, which
It's
I think is
mad
quite
that
cool.
it's exactly the same one.
Yeah.
That's really cool. And those sorts of situations, and they do happen every now and then, of finding a car that you remember from like 6 years ago, like an exact car.
Yeah.
You're like, oh,
Yeah.
wait, I did something with that.
Yeah, when we worked it out, and it was easy enough to work it out because it had actually been wrapped, so it was in a distinct design. It was kind of made to look like an American police car, black and white. So it was very easy to know that was the same one. And in the previous owner history of the new car, it was from that area, and it all added up, and we were able to confirm it. And then it was kind of like, yeah, I mean, you can't write that kind of story, and I love a story behind a car. I work very hard with the specs of my cars to make sure there's a reason for them, or it links to something. Nothing's done just, because. There's always a reason. So, yeah, that was part of the whole, like, I've just got to buy this one. This is the one.
And you've got plans to drive that a whole lot more at some point?
I think so. So, I mean, I'm not going to lie, I feel very spoiled to have far more cars than I, in many cases, know what to do with. But I think that is part of collecting, right? It's, if you collect anything, whether it's somebody who collects watches or trainers, sneakers, or whatever it is in the world. And I seem to have an obsession with collecting track-focused supercars, which is very much the theme of my garage. Of course, there will always be new things coming in. But I think it's going to be the way with the cars I own that I buy a car, use it properly, feature it very heavily, make tons of videos with it, try and almost condense its entire crazy life into this like 6 to 12 month period. And then from there on, still enjoy owning it and still enjoy taking it out from time to time and doing big drives with multiple of my cars together when we can do that again. But it won't have, the front of house position. It won't be the car that sees daily driving again. The SLS, like I say, I'll never sell it. But if I only drive it every 3 months, I'm still very happy having it. I'm still very, very happy to look at it in the garage and remember. One of the biggest things for me is, looking at the physical car reminds you of so many good times and so many crazy and fun adventures. I can think of a lot of things with that car. Some misbehavior, but also, like the moments the first time I drove it on the Nurburgring, the first time I drove it to 200 miles an hour, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. And it's just cool. It's just fun.
But then does that over time, okay, I know with this car, you're like, I'm never going to sell that. For me, that makes it really difficult to sell cars. I'm awful at it.
I think I tend to decide generally before I buy a car whether I'm going to keep it or one day sell it. Okay. I don't necessarily know how long I'm going to keep a car for, or, in the case of, say, the Taycan, when I bought that, I didn't know if it would be 3 months or 3 years, but I know I'm not going to keep it. With the, upcoming later this year, Lamborghini Huracan STO, my first Lambo, I'm going into that with the plan to keep it as well, because I've gone outrageous with the spec, and it's going to be a car, again, that I'll use a lot. So things do change for sure. I wouldn't be surprised if one day I do sell a car that I didn't plan to sell for whatever reason, just changed my heart or didn't gel with it, or who knows, or somebody made a really good offer. Sometimes that happens. Yeah. And common sense has to prevail at the end of the day. But generally, if it's like the G-Wagon, that will go eventually. The M3, that will go eventually. But I think the special kind of semi-limited, some cars are numbered, but some are just limited by time or whatever. Yeah. I care so much more about myself personally building the car collection. It's, what I desire to do. Some people would want to go and buy a very nice house. Some people would want to build up the bank balance and put money into stocks or whatever it is. But for me, it's cars. I live around cars. I spend every day around cars. And it's a physical embodiment of what I'm doing online, what Shmee150 is. It's that collection of cars in the garage. So it feels special to keep them, and who knows what the future values of these things are, but if you don't plan on selling them, you don't worry about it, It's like, make some money, spend it on a car. Now I get to own that car, and even if I don't drive it, I'm still able to enjoy having it in the collection. And I've always been a bit of a hoarder. When I was young, I used to keep everything I could keep. Always annoyed my mother, continues to annoy my girlfriend. It's just the way it is. Anything
You've
I
still
can...
got a lot of boxes around for items that could be sold at some point in time.
I've got collections of everything now. Model cars, Lego, Hot Wheels, swatches, just stuff that I always end up with lots of. And the biggest one of those by far is cars. Track focus
biggest
cars.
and most expensive and most faff is cars.
But it's it's a double-edged sword. I'm very lucky that somehow I've fallen into a job that allows me to literally film the cars and make my living through it. It's kind of the ultimate dream, really, to be able to have this obsession that's also my income stream.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you managed to get all of the up-to-date mini versions of all of the big ones?
Yes, pretty much. Pretty much. It's hard with new cars because the model cars come after, but I've more or less got every car that I own in the 1:18 scale model exactly paint matched with number plates to my real cars.
Nice.
So it's kind of like I can dream up and imagine what the garage would have looked like if I still had that one with this new one, or in 1:18 scale. Because they're actually surprisingly lifelike. When you just take a photo of them on the ground and you hold your camera right down on the ground, the photos actually end up looking really, at a glance, at a small image, they look like a car. They don't look like a model. And when you put a little line of them together, it looks like it could be a photo shoot of the actual cars.
Do you sit there funny, sort of planning out your garage or garaging and stuff like that and be like, okay, well, that one's going to go left of that one, it's just going to go in the middle, and then this one's going to be served from the right?
If you could add up the amount of hours I've spent over the last, particularly the 3 or 4 months before moving into the garage, planning which cars are going to go where inside it, and not just the cars, but also the lifts and also the office space, and just reshuffling and floor planning and moving. It's been a lot. It's been far too much. But
so when do you move into your first garage?
Well, in theory, early May. Very early May is the plan. The Shmuseum will be born. There's a lot of work, and at this stage I'm still trying to get my head completely around how it's all going to play out in terms of, obviously the security needs to be installed before the cars can come in, but then equally I've got to be thinking about what I'm doing with videos, which people will probably now have seen some of, and the behind the scenes content that we're trying to create of it all as well, with the team that's now helping me, because it's become too much of an operation to run solo. And this has really been the point at which I've made that call. Up till now I've pretty much run everything solo, even through the US and all through last year, but now just managing the cars, and from your own cars, everything needs looking after. Everything has a service every year. There are issues, there are MOTs, there's tax to deal with, insurance. It's at this level I can't do it solo anymore, especially not with keeping so busy with other projects. So a bit more of a team operation. And I think this has really been the time where I've said, right, it's time for Shmee150 version 2, or the next generation of what is Shmee150 moving into this location, which also in a nice way, I think for me, will mean slightly less traveling in the future. I think for a lot of people who did travel a lot for their work, 2020 was really a time of saying, actually, I quite enjoy being at home.
Yeah.
Quite enjoy a bit more downtime. I've had 2020 was the longest I've had sitting at home or between flights or whatever metric you want to look at in a decade. So it was really a time that was welcome in many ways. Gave a lot of thinking space.
Yeah, and so moving forward, you're trying to work things out a little differently to be able to spend a bit more time at home, or
a bit more time at home, and the garage is the main way to do that, because I think the garage opens up so many more opportunities beyond just storing my cars. It also brings in the opportunities for stories around both memorabilia in my garage, or people coming to visit the garage and something to that connects with them, to having a physical location even to work on. I've always covered stories under the tagline for the channel, Living the Supercar Dream. And that can be, you know, way back that was buying a car, sticking on an exhaust and wrapping it, the kind of cliche YouTuber thing now.
Yeah.
It was fairly unique back then. Nowadays, it's been, you know, respraying a car and respraying the GT Black Series as well, through to my Red Focus RS project, full project from the ground up, similar in a way with the GR Yaris. And, you know, I think one of the interesting parts of that for me is effectively building the garage, going through that whole garage process, because it's part of it, right? It's my next dream as well, and it's something that many years ago, you know, one day I wanted, in the same way I was collecting whatever it was then, Pokemon cards or whatever.
Yeah.
As I grew up,
held on to any of your Pokemon cards from the back of your day?
No, sadly not. I definitely would have had a lot that were very valuable. However, as a teenager, you know, 5 years or so after collecting them, I did make a lot of money selling them all on eBay. So as a teenager, that felt great. So I was all right with that. You know, the dream was to have a space to store and present the cars, and I'm very excited for. I'm excited to just dig into it, because I've never done a big property project, even down to installing the office and the mezzanine, to installing the lighting, to painting the walls and the floor. I actually want to just do it all, not literally myself, but I want to have the professionals for each category there and kind of get involved and do it with them, because I think it's a big part of the car dream. You know, the car dream is your first car, your first supercar, your first kind of collection of cars, your first dream garage. And it's a very American style, I think. You know, perhaps to do this big garage thing, more American than UK. Generally, the UK is more cars parked in a storage, less people having their own warehouses for their collections. But it's something I've always really quite wanted to do, and I've been trying to find the right location to do this setup for probably 2.5 years now, I think.
Yeah, it's been a while.
So I've had a lot of time to think about it, and in that time I've been to visit probably 20-25 different venues before I found the right one.
Yeah.
So every location has been new floor plans, new deciding which cars can go where, all of that.
What's been the most interesting sort of bit about it, designing it, or that you wouldn't necessarily have thought about going in? And you're like, you know what, I've really enjoyed messing with aircon or something.
Well, I mean, I haven't really got that far through all of this yet. Personally, I love planning how it could be. You know, planning, how does this all connect? If I put the office there, what's the view? Can I see all of the cars nicely from my desk? You know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But there's been so much to think about, which is why I haven't gone full on. I considered a lot. Should I build the whole place and then present it finished? Should I start, you know, from day one with, here's my garage? But
no.
I didn't really want to go down that path for a few reasons. One, because, of course, I want to share the adventure of making it. And I was stuck in the US for the early few months of the year, so I couldn't do that. And the other was also because I know people will suggest things and say, why didn't you do this? And I'm like, why didn't I do that? That would have been great. So doing it with the audience kind of involved in the story gives this whole new, I think, well, it's thousands of minds thinking about it as opposed to a couple.
Yes.
Which will definitely create some interesting ideas. Even the people I've spoken about it with so far have suggested so many cool things that are now going to be in the space.
Incorporated, yeah.
Yeah.
And the journey, that's the fun bit.
The journey is a big fun bit. The most stressful part for me, which I think a lot of people won't realise, is how expensive it is. The entire setup, even to install all the security things you need and all the deposits and all the fire and security contracts and equipment and just everything, is astronomically more expensive than car storage. I mean, the unit, if let's say we can house 15 cars before putting in any lifts, or maybe up to 30 if you've put a bunch of lifts in, even if it's 30 cars, it's still probably 2 to 3 times as expensive as putting 30 cars into a car storage.
Yeah.
And so when it's only 15 cars in there, it's 5 or 6 times more expensive, which a lot of people wouldn't necessarily think about. And the, you know, property prices anywhere near London, I think pretty much anywhere in the UK, are so expensive that the whole place makes things like the Senna and the Ford GT seem relatively affordable, which is what I hadn't necessarily considered. I think when I started looking for units and spaces, I never expected how much it would all cost. For sure, that's been a bit of a shock.
Yeah, because that's something I've sort of wondered, because you look at, you know, storing a car with X person, Y person, whatever, and there's like a minimum price, and you shop around and you can go further from London, but like there's sort of a price. And then you see the more expensive ones and they cost that. And then you go, how much would it cost for me to have a garage with a car in it?
You wouldn't be able to save money. The fundamental reason for that, though, is car storage facilities aren't generally very profitable businesses. In many cases, they are created by supercar collectors who need somewhere to store their cars and their friends' cars. But what ends up happening, from my understanding of the industry in general, is that car storage often becomes a case of making contacts. So long as the business just about breaks even, the contacts made through the industry for car sales or for other business ideas that are generated around it. It's one of those like owning boutique hotels. It's a business that isn't going to ever make fortunes, but opens very interesting doors.
Yeah, if you have a super high-end car storage business, your customers are people that are at least worth meeting for sure.
Yeah, very interesting. Interesting people from whatever it is specifically, from company bosses to people who work in senior positions. There's all sorts of things happen. I mean, you and I know well, it's like when you go on Gumball, for example, the attendees list on Gumball, many people who are there are just there for who they meet while they're there. And you watch people making business deals over excessive amounts of drinks while they're exhausted at the end of a long drive. But it's just how it works.
Yeah.
It's the social element.
All sorts of car things, like the Corsa Cliente or whatever. Cliente,
yeah, the Ferrari Corsa Cliente. Yeah, exactly.
Buy an FXXK, run it for a year, do a lot of business. Job done. Yeah. Marketing.
Because there's your list of 20 billionaires taking part in one event.
Yeah. And
It's exactly how it works.
Do you, with the garage setup, do you have, I guess it depends on how many cars there's going to be in there and stuff like that, but have you tried to design it so that you can take any car out any time with relatively minimal effort?
Yes, absolutely. I went through a lot of different ideas of, what if I block in, here I can squeeze in extra cars, etc. But one of the big things to me about my cars is that I want them to always be accessible. If something's too complicated to even move, like let's say you have one of these new triple stackers.
Yeah.
If you've got the car on the very top, which means you need to move the two below and something that's blocking them in front of them, you never will.
No.
That's never happening. Now, obviously, with a bit of a team in the garage, this all gets much easier. It's not just me on my own having to shuffle everything around, but basically speaking, the idea is that nothing needs more than one other car moved. And basically that's when cars are on lifts, one above another. You just need to move the one below to get the one on top out.
I've found that, like at home now, I've got a bit more space and I could fit a bunch more cars in, but it's like I can have two, I can basically have three that are ready to go. As soon as you have four, that's it. You've got to move a car to get in a car. And like you said, as soon as you've got to move something, the chance of it getting used, you just look at the ones that you can drive straight away and go, well, I'll drive one of them.
Yeah, so one of my current ideas is with the way the floor plan works is to have this kind of road racetrack style layout through the middle. I'm not sure if by this point I've done it or tried it or we've seen if it works, but if it does, it will have quite a cool way of looking, inspired by a collection that I visited before.
Okay.
While everything's still accessible, because it's a big thing. Like you said, as soon as it's effort, you're just never going to take that car out. I think I'm very lucky that my garage is located on some nice countryside roads. In fact, it's literally on some roads I've filmed on regularly in the past. So I can pull any car out. I can literally, if I've got 15 minutes, I can take a car for a 10-minute run and park it back up.
Oh, that's ideal.
And I want to be able to enjoy that. I want to be able to say, I wonder how these two actually compare, and just take two cars one after the other and go do a drive. That
in itself, being in a location that you can go for a drive and the drive starts at the door rather than 45 minutes. Like, I think that's something that people that live in London are just like, this is just a thing that happens to other people. We never get to enjoy this sort of
we
luxury.
Definitely don't. And, London has got significantly worse for cars in the last 12 months. It's a completely different landscape now to where it was, and it was already pretty awful, to be honest. I mean, for me, I think Taycan for London and everything else out. I'm interested to see which cars I end up keeping at my place in town. I have 3 parking spots in the garage under my building. I could have more, I could have less if I wanted. And I'm going to be interested to see which cars I end up gravitating towards having here. probably be Taycan for getting around the city, G63 for anything that needs some kind of lugging, and then one of the sports supercars on rotation, depending, how I'm feeling, what I was filming that day or what's been moving around.
Because what's your sort of commute going to be? What sort of time? Is it like
half an hour, 10 minutes, 10 miles, half an hour. Taycan. 100%.
And can't you lug stuff in the Taycan?
You can fit a decent amount. Obviously, you can't like go and tow a trailer or take anything huge, but it's got a pretty decent amount of luggage space. Fold seats, back seats as well, back doors. Well, more than enough. I don't tend to need a very practical car for anything, and probably the Taycan's too big. It'd probably make more sense to have something tiny. But I think this is the one situation where an EV works well in my life. I do a lot of long day journeys where an EV is utterly useless because the range just isn't good enough, and road trips as well. And just traveling with an electric car is not the best. But for going backwards and forwards on a half an hour drive every day, when you can have a charging point in the garage, I will get there, swing into the garage, plug it in, and by the time I'm ready to leave, it's 100% again. And actually, the Taycan retains charge amazingly well. This is something that I hadn't really considered until the US trip. I didn't know what would happen. I was trying to ask Porsche before we went away, or rather, when we had left the UK and then realised we were going to get stuck away, I said to Porsche, how long is this car going to last for? Is it good to be left? But the reality is that after, I sent somebody came around to check on the car after we'd been away for 3 weeks, and it had gone down 1%.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, well, that's all good then. That could just sit there, because what happens is when the normal 12-volt battery dies, it recharges it off the main power supply, charges it back up again. Well, it doesn't die, obviously. It's like a built-in battery charger, and the whole system just retains charge. I reckon you could probably leave it for a year and it wouldn't be a problem.
So it has like a little battery and a big battery?
Yeah. Basically, your normal, typical little battery for running your tracker and your electronics and security and locking the car and that kind of stuff, I guess. But the big it can charge the little battery off the big battery. And the big battery is 93 kilowatts or whatever. And that's more than enough to keep it alive, I guess, as long as you could ever really want to. Although it'll be interesting to see in the future what happens with barn find electric cars. What'd you do with an electric car that hasn't been started in 20 years and it's probably completely corroded and I don't even know what?
Plug in your C-Tech charger and say, renew battery, please.
Boost it. Yes.
The whole thing explodes. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. But you have to think about that kind of thing. But no, it's super convenient because, I will, if I know I'm going somewhere a longer distance with the, and I want to take the Taycan EV style, it will just be on near enough 100% every time I bring it home.
Yeah.
And, if I'm at my space every day or two, it will always be fully charged, and then I only take another car if I want to go further than 150 miles or something.
Yeah, and you can't charge at home, can you?
No, I don't have the ability, although it's a funny conversation with the building management because, as you can imagine, a number of residents have electric cars now.
Yeah.
There's a Mini E and a Model 3 down there in the garage and a couple of other things. And it's one of those of, do they go for it now or do they wait a little bit longer and it becomes less expensive and a better service?
Presumably they have some sort of electricity in there, though.
Yes, but I don't think in the way that you could get any kind of decent quick charging. And, a car like the Taycan takes 3 days to charge off a normal main socket. It's not effective. So what I figured with the Taycan was if you needed to use it every day and needed to charge it back up every night, you couldn't get away with more than about 50 to 60 miles a day.
Right.
Otherwise, you won't get the charge back into it.
Yeah.
On a normal main socket, which is pretty useless for anything other than your around-the-corner commute. Like, that would be fine for my commute now. Absolutely fine. But it wouldn't be fine for, longer distance.
Yeah. Because I was looking at it after I drove the rear-wheel drive one. Like, that was the first electric car I sort of drove that I went, ooh, I could, like, see myself having
because
one
it's
of
a
these.
Porsche. It's a Porsche first and an EV second. And I found it had a really weird time because when I revealed that I'd bought the Taycan, which was a completely spontaneous decision, I just decided I want to try it. I want to give it a go and just go head on in. I'm not that kind of early adopter, massive supporter of EVs, but I felt as a car enthusiast who's got a pretty good understanding of most of the market, I should own one of these and try it so that I can give some kind of actual feedback from my experience. but it completely polarizes people. I had people who are saying, I'm stopping following, how dare you buy an EV, you're not a petrol head, etc., etc. And then on the other hand, I had EV early adopters, the people who are less bothered by barriers to entry and will work around problems with more effort than the general public. I had them saying, oh, you're getting all of this wrong, why are you getting it wrong? Whereas I was just trying to show my actual experiences. I couldn't believe how controversial it would be. It was like going into politics or something. People just flying in both directions. But it's been a really interesting experience just in terms of learning which are the charging points not to use and which are the ones that work well, and what situations can you use the car. In many ways, driving something like the Taycan, like we just said, it's a Porsche first. It feels like driving a Panamera. It feels like driving a quiet luxury Porsche. The steering, the pedal response is not the same as driving a Tesla or something. But then in many other ways, when you're just cruising along, it's kind of Rolls-Royce-esque because you have instant torque and it's silent and it's just a lovely place to be.
The ride is amazing.
Yeah, it's silky smooth, isn't it, in the Taycan? And it's just a really nice car. Just a really nice car. And you forget, when you're actually driving, you forget that it's an EV. It only becomes relevant when it pings up that it's running out and you're like, uh-oh. But the theory then is if you're charging at home, you start it every day on 100%, so you don't need to go to a petrol station. If you take your car, if you have to fill up, you just accept that you have to fill up. If you started every single morning with 100% or nearly 100%, you don't have to stop anywhere. You don't even have to go waste 10 minutes at a petrol station.
Which I had never thought about. And I had always thought, charging cars is annoying and stuff like that. And then over the last 6 months, I've had experience with some more electric cars. And then I had that Taycan for a bit. And then after I'd had the Taycan, and it's this electric thing has been like seeping into my brain that it's possible to get in a car that is already warm and ready to go and making no noise, and it's got 100% range. It's fully charged every day.
If you charge at home, it's like somebody came around overnight and filled up your car for you.
And warmed it for you before you got in it. That whole thing. Then when I got in my S4, and it had been getting lower and lower on fuel, and I'd been doing loads of short trips. And then I had needed a long one, and we were like, wouldn't it have just been so great if this was fully charged? Like, if it was like fully charged when I left, that would have been damn convenient.
Yeah, for sure.
But it's an interesting one.
It really is, and I get people's adversity to it because it is a learning curve. But I'm certainly not put off future EVs. I guarantee I'll have more EVs in the future for sure, and I'm quite excited by what they can do. I just hope that we're allowed to have a world with EVs and combustion engines living in harmony. I worry that there are so many pushes from governments, particularly the UK government, to try and get rid of engines in the traditional sense, and I think there might be a case of stabbing themselves in the foot in this respect, because I'm sure there will be technologies we don't even yet know about to be developed in the coming decade or two. Something that obviously there are things being worked on like synthetic fuels, hydrogen, even making more efficient combustion engines. But there are probably ideas that people are working on that you and I have never heard of yet.
Absolutely.
That will filter down or perhaps grow. And because of the massive push towards electric, R&D budgets aren't being spent there. R&D budgets are all being spent on electric because that's what everyone's been said. Hey, we'll give businesses the best lease rates on, or best benefit kinds or whatever on this category of cars. That's what you got to do.
Subsidized, all this sort of stuff. I was looking at something recently, and it was about the way you define these sorts of rules and the way you do it. And one option, which is saying, okay, by a certain date, it has to all be electric. That's the thing. Your manufacturer basically has one avenue. They've got to go, okay, it has to be electric by that date. We have no choice, kind of scrap, efficiency, whatever. Like, it just has to be electric by that date. Whereas if you put like a 5% annual reduction in CO2, something like that, and it's a rolling figure, they'll work out the best solution.
I am firmly in the camp that if you had said to AMG, for example, this 4-litre twin-turbo V8, which has been shrinking over time, it was 6-litre, 6-litre 4, 5.5s, whatever, down to the 4-litre twin-turbo. If you said to them, right, you don't need to go electric, you can spend some money improving that engine, make that engine more efficient, maybe bring it down to a slightly smaller capacity, whatever it needs to be. budgets could improve that even further. And, there are cars out there that do 60, 70 miles per gallon, a bit more budget towards that, they'll do 100 miles per gallon.
Yeah.
But because everyone's kind of said, right, don't spend any more on those are actually being used for longer than they would otherwise have been used. Those engines are now going to continue. Take the next generation S-Class, for example. That's going to have a 4-litre twin-turbo V8, whereas it might have had something that was improved based on that.
Yeah.
Had Mercedes not been told you've got to make electric cars.
It is really complicated, and it's quite an interesting space for the solutions, but it is having these sorts of hard rules do make it tricky.
Yeah, it's a disturbingly political game, unfortunately. For those of us who like it for the passion of emotion, unfortunately, cars are very much a thing that governments have to use to appear green and to gain votes at the end of the day. It looks like saving the world, helping the environment. Whether it's right or wrong, none of us really know at this stage. And I worry that, here in the UK and around Europe, 2 decades ago, diesel cars were being pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed. Everyone was like, you've got to make diesel, go diesel, get every car on the road diesel. And look at the last 5 years. That didn't go so well, did it?
Yeah.
And I slightly worry that we're watching a deja vu with electric. That's where I'm at on it.
Very possibly. And we had this weird one. It's an EU regulation about the cars aren't they going to get bigger displacements again? I can't remember what this was like. Porsche. It was like it was a limit on what is it? It's a specific output per litre.
Oh really?
They brought in a specific output per litre.
So engines have to get larger so they can make the power.
Have to get bigger to do the power. Like,
oh, what?
Guys, what a
But
stupid idea.
even I think in some ways twin turbos have been slightly disingenuous to the statistics, because when you're driving a turbo engine, you never get the performance figures that were targeted. Whereas they're not performance figures, you never get the economy figures, efficiency figures that were targeted, because they just don't, unless you're driving them really gently and not even using the turbos, you don't get into it. Whereas a naturally aspirated engine, you're much more likely to get closer to it. Or certainly from my experiences, if you have a forced induction of some description, you're not going to be as close to it. So all of these things are developed and created to work around whatever legislation is imposed, whereas the people imposing the legislation probably don't know as much as the people working on the technologies.
Yeah, well, they absolutely don't. It's highly unlikely, isn't it? They're incredibly well informed, but like we said, there'll be people working on stuff that might be a better solution. So if you just steam in and say this is the answer, the turbo point is so true, because I remember, like, it was when anyone that's owned a turbocharged car and lives in a city, that's probably the first time they've ever experienced single-digit fuel economy numbers. Like, 9 mpg. Whereas if you have an NA engine, you're never going to get that low. It's somewhat impossible.
Yeah, fascinating.
Well, okay, we've taken a significant detour from where we were at. The AMG GT Black Series, whatever, the latest one. AMG GT Black Series? That is the latest one.
Yeah, that's the one. Not a GTR Black Series, as everyone says. Just AMG GT Black Series.
This got sort of leaked at one point in time, as everything gets leaked. And then I remember seeing a video from AMG, Mercedes, that group, of someone sneaking in, taking some pictures, and it was you.
So, funny story, this. Really funny story. Obviously, like anything at this level, it was shot a long time before it was public. So when I saw and filmed this video with Mercedes, and to be honest, maybe I should rewind back a little bit. I was kind of super lucky to be involved, because this was at the time, as I said, last year in May, when we had gone over to Germany and been based in Germany, and AMG wanted to create this video, and I'm sure I was not exactly top of the list of people they wanted to invite, but I imagine with travel restrictions, I was in Germany and available. So somehow the call came in saying, "Hey, would you like to be part of this?" And it wasn't a paid gig or anything like that. It was just we're going to shoot this video. We could hire an actor, or if you'd like to do it, you're welcome to be part of it. And I was like, hell yeah, I'm doing that. Like, how can I not want to do that? I'm there with my SLS Black Series, right? And this is a car I've got my name down for as well. Like, being part of it's epic, because normally that kind of thing is like Lewis Hamilton or Valtteri Bottas, or somebody who's actually a household name or a significant Mercedes employee. So we shot this video. like I say, probably 4 to 6 weeks before it came out. And I filmed a little behind the scenes video myself. I got to bring my SLS along to the launch. And I mean, like many major productions and, television type stuff, it was a traditional media crew as opposed to an in-house or car themed crew.
Yeah.
So not everybody around was as into the cars as I was. And I'm standing there like fawning over the GT Black Series, trying to take in every detail. And everyone around is like, it's a car. Anyway, so we made the video, obviously giving this storyline that I was effectively sneaking in with my phone, taking pictures, and then taking the car out for a joyride. And I think I can say now I did get to drive it back then. Nice. In unusual circumstances. As part of the filming, some of it's out on track. So I drove the GT Black Series when there was only one of them in the world on a racetrack at night with no floodlights.
Sick.
So the first time I ever drove that car was, we need to film some like driving impression shots, so driving reasonably aggressively in pitch black on a track. I had no idea where it went left or right. Absolutely no idea. It's Mercedes test track, so it's not even like it's online to look up.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, this is safe. This is great. No, it was completely safe, but it was a lot of fun. It just didn't give me much space in my mind to even try and focus or take in anything about the car, because I was so like, oh, the camera's in the right place, am I doing the right thing, etc., etc. But then, like you say, this was really fun because we did all of this, and then there was the back and forwards in the edit, and like I say, I just basically didn't do that much other than sneak down a ladder and go pull a car cover off and climb on board and take it for a drive. So there wasn't really much from my side's input. But going backwards and forwards on the video edit, we got to probably about a week before the reveal, and then lo and behold, these spy shots appeared online, and we knew exactly where they came from. We knew who took them, and it was really, at this stage, it was like, oh, really, because for me it was kind of, we had this whole build up prepared. We had this whole like stuff I was going to share of the behind the scenes, without revealing the car, and the build up to the day. And you can imagine global corporate, right? Of course, there's a full structure for everything. And then these shots came out, which was in the room where they were doing private viewings of the car to very select customers in the build up to the reveal. Yeah. But it was quite funny just because of how it looked like it was part of the story. It looked like those photos were as if I had taken them. It was in a completely different place. It was the photos were in a place about 3 hours from where the behind the scenes garage was. Yeah. From where I was, where the test video track is. Sorry, maybe 2 hours from where the test track is, where we shot the actual video in a workshop, to the workshop where the pictures were leaked. But it was really, in so many ways, it was frustrating because it was such a cool. I mean, I'm not saying it wasn't a cool opportunity, but it was all, I was all hyped up for the secret reveal. Yeah. Then the pictures came out, and for that week, I must have received 10,000 messages saying, "Have you seen this? Have you seen the new car? Like, what do you think of it?" And I was completely like, zip. I can't say anything. Like, the number of friends who were sending me those photos on WhatsApp and different group chats and things, it was like, yeah, looks good. And I'm completely, I can't confirm. I don't know what this is. I don't know what this car's about. And then, obviously, then the video dropped. And it was so funny when the video dropped. I was actually driving at the time. I don't think I knew the exact minute it was going live. And I was driving through Germany. Actually, I know what I was doing. I was heading from Germany back to the UK. So I was on the Autobahn, and I knew the video had dropped because my phone just went mad. Absolutely mad. I've never seen anything like it. In that first half an hour, like it just started going. But it was all like, was that you?
Yeah. Are
you in that video? It's like, what do you think? and then it became that, did you release the pictures last week? So yeah, it was funny how it played out as a story and how it left ambiguous. We left it ambiguous. At this stage, they were kind of like, do you mind kind of just leaving it as it is, and we just let these pictures circulate and then reveal it, when we do? And I'm kind of, I don't mind. It's all good for me. It's a shame in general when new cars get leaked, I should say.
Yeah.
And you know what? While they might not be doing everything perfectly at the moment, McLaren did an incredible job with Artura. Nobody saw Artura before they presented it.
I remember seeing the launch and the website. I remember going to their website and being like, wow, which was weird. Just like the actual website that you could view on your phone, the way it worked for that car, I've never seen anything like that. So this is, I don't know who put this together, but this is insane.
I didn't see it, so I don't know about that. But the really interesting thing was, for the reveal, they had cars around the world. They had one on the East Coast US, one on the West Coast, one in the Middle East, but yet they never got spy shotted and posted out. And, I know a lot of, as you do too, a lot of the PR teams of these companies, marketing people, and a lot of people involved in the transport world, and it's very, very difficult to stop a car being leaked to the world. But given the amount of work that goes in over many years with a new car, from the engineers, the designers, the testers, the marketing guys planning the whole schedule and sequence of publication, it must be so heartbreaking when somebody goes for that cheap shot and just shares a photo out.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was kind of full congratulations to McLaren on that one, that they managed to keep it secret.
It's very impressive. What was another one? Ford GT.
Yeah, the Ford GT was probably the biggest one, because Artura people, we knew they've been working on that for years. Yeah. I thought it was supposed to be presented a year and a half before it appeared. Nothing about that was a surprise technically. 3-litre twin turbo V6, we knew that wasn't new. But the 2015 reveal of the new Ford GT was the big one, because nobody even saw it coming. Nobody did.
No.
They that's one of the things I've really loved about the car, actually, is that whole story around it. Nobody predicted it. I remember, because I went to the reveal of it. I was in Detroit when they did present it, and even 2 days before, when we got to Detroit, there were only the earliest of whisperings of our Ford about to present a new supercar. It wasn't in any way confirmed. The day before, I think people dismissed it a little bit. And then on the day of, even when we went into the preview, into the hall that they had hired at the Detroit Auto Show to launch the car, we still didn't know it was coming. And they did the whole presentation Apple style. They presented all the other new products, the GT350, the Raptor, this, that, the other, Ford Performance. And then it was kind of there's something else we need to show you, by the way. Just at the end, when we thought, oh, that's it. And then boom, here's the car, which you look at the production car now, it's the same. They had that car ready with no one knowing about it. And that's not going to happen again. No one can do that again.
No.
Not in the digital world, social media world now. It's impossible.
Yeah, stuff gets shared so quickly. And it's just, literally, like you said, there's just so many people in the chain that can take a picture.
Yeah, unfortunately. And a lot of people don't realise the power even an individual has. So when it comes to, spy shots of a new car, somebody who does have access to the car might share a picture of it to, let's say, one family member, thinking, hey, I'll share it to this person. That family member might say, oh, I'll share it to my friend. He won't share it anywhere. That friend then puts it into a group, and then, boom, it's out. It's done. There are no secrets. And I learned a long time ago, even with my Shmee stuff, if I want to have a surprise for my videos, don't put it in WhatsApp groups with friends, because it will get out. You just can't. Even in any group, as soon as there are a decent number of people in there, gone is the chain. Gone is the ability to track, where something's been shared from or to. And the person who shared it the first time, who wasn't supposed to, would never have even thought about it. We're not of the mentality yet of understanding how that works.
Yeah.
Joe Public doesn't understand.
There's so many single chains, before it goes into a group of 100 or something, that it hasn't really gone anywhere, and then someone drops it in a 200-person group.
Yeah. Boom. Yeah, I get it a lot. I get a lot of stuff in my Instagram DMs that isn't supposed to be out there.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's I can't speak for them, but if I was that manufacturer, I would probably ask that you don't continue sharing that to other people. Stuff flies around social media very fast.
Yeah, I learned, and you absolutely exactly the same. If you want to share, if I want to show you something, and you'll say the same to me, you'll be like, look, I'll show you, but I can't send it to you.
Yeah.
Or that's level one. That's this really, really, really cannot go anywhere. The one down that is I'll share it with you, but you can't share it with anyone else. And I'm like, okay. Yeah. And there's that trust level of I won't. I will show it to someone else maybe, but I won't send it to them.
Yeah.
There's no
yeah, but we're in a world where everyone's learning this, right?
Yeah.
All of us around the globe in different countries are all learning, and we're talking about it specifically from the perspective of new car launches. But this is the same with everything. There's so many categories.
Yeah, like the latest coronavirus news. That went around WhatsApp way faster than everything else.
Talking to a family member about a proposal or something, or a new baby or something like that. That's the kind of news again that spreads. Boom, 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 boom. Everyone knows.
Yeah, I can see how, like you said, so much work goes into these reveals, and then it gets leaked, and this is
a frustration element for sure.
There's like two ways of doing it. One, you've just got to deal with it, which is what most people do. And then some, and in my view, I understand, but I think they get it really wrong. They start singling out individual people and just really like having a go at them. And that person did not take the photo and they did not share it for the first time. They got it in a group. No, maybe they did, but it's highly unlikely it's that person that actually leaked it. And all you do is piss that person off unbelievably by having a go at them.
Yeah, for effectively resharing something that was out there. Yeah, I guess, it's one of these things. I worked out a long time ago that something can be floating around, but if I reshare it with a massive audience, it will accelerate that process much quicker.
Yeah.
Obviously, I have a close relationship with a lot of the people who work on many of these cars because I go to so many of these events and I meet them all, the designers, the engineers, the test drivers, the marketing teams. I know so many of the people now at the car companies, so I know I have an interest in obviously protecting what they've worked so hard on. It's a very difficult one because, there's no way to prepare for that kind of thing. It's like, you're a journalist at a newspaper and a story comes up. Yeah. You go with it. It happens right then and there. But if you're the marketing manager at an OEM car manufacturer, you didn't prepare for what if the story leaks today? You had your schedule of this is what we're posting, this is what we're posting, this is what we're posting, and you've worked on it for a couple of months, and then all of a sudden you've got to trash everything you did and start rewriting the script again. And all of a sudden it's your work's wasted, it's a damper on your emotions, and in many cases I think it's a bit of a stress. I completely agree with you that when something is out, it's virtually impossible to control that news anymore. And the number one trick is to work out how to be responsive to it. Secrets online don't work. When something's out there in some form, you're best going head on approaching it with a new plan.
Yeah.
But it's very hard in the heat of the moment, I think, to come up with that.
It must be an absolute nightmare. And unless you've planned for it and from the outset gone, basically from day one, this is going to get leaked. And like, how do we plan this over time? And how does that plan evolve over time if it gets leaked? Which is a lot of work. But
yeah, one thing I never understood with car manufacturers is that a lot of them, obviously people like myself, receive pictures of most new models before they launch to do a piece about if I choose to. What I don't understand is when somebody who's on that kind of approved, accredited list leaks something, which happens, like magazines. They're the worst at it. And plenty of social media pages as well and blogs and things. When somebody leaks something, why they still get the next stuff? Why do people keep sending stuff to people that leak it?
Yeah, I don't understand. And also, like now, the tech is absolutely out there for you to be able to send each journalist a different file. Like not as in it's got a different
metadated
name,
file. You can see where it leaked.
It's like full on metadated into the actual photo that cannot, even if it's screenshotted or whatever, it's still in there. And you can just go, Tim leaked it because it says Tim's photo on it. And you're like, oh.
Yeah. To be honest, I don't know why nobody does that. That would be really quite awkward. Somebody will share a photo without realizing that at some point.
Yes.
That a brand has done that. And then they'll get full, like, caught rabbit in the headlights. Boom.
Because that's quite like a nerdy photography thing to know that you can
but
do.
I love the idea of it.
It's
great.
It is absolutely what I would do, and just hang that person out to dry, like big style, very publicly, because don't do it. And like you said,
you make a joking tweet about it. You make a joking tweet of, thanks to this person without tagging, obviously. Thanks to this person. For the glorious leak that we've been working for 3 years on or whatever.
Yeah. You may not be at the next press launch. Someone else from your magazine will be. Because like your platform like is huge now. And your Facebook page, for example, and there are other iterations of this, is basically a news service. Like it's got, you talk about, you have whether it's you or someone else writing about the new whatever Artura has been launched. Here's the specs, all this sort of stuff. So when something's been leaked, you guys do post about it because it's now news. How do you draw that line?
It's hard.
When to post it, when to not post it.
Believe me, it's really hard. We have a lot of discussions. Something will hit the inbox and the guys will say, can we post this? And I have to put the brakes on. Like you say, the Facebook page is not run by me personally. The Shmee150 Facebook page is run by a team of guys. I have very little involvement in it. But there have certainly been times where I've been like, not posting that. That's not what we consider like in the news. Generally, it needs to be on one of the big car blogs first. Yeah. Somebody of a big scale before we can post anything out. And if we have been officially given content for that, like if we've been given content under embargo in advance, we won't share anything. Yeah. Nothing until the embargo. If we're in an agreement. But I think equally it goes the other way around. If we see something leaked, we'll probably share it with the PR guy or PR person at the manufacturer and say, hey, do you know this is out there?
Yeah.
They probably don't yet. We see things probably before they do. It's a two-way relationship. They might say, yeah, it's out there. Go ahead.
Yeah.
I think it's a relationship thing. Like I say, we don't want to steal anybody's thunder. I had enough run-ins of my own when I was smaller in the car world, but I think it's better for everyone to play by the rules. To work together. It's difficult because when you are a smaller platform, obviously you want to get that breakthrough scoop. Yeah, you want to get that scoop that makes your page grow, which is easier to do if you share something that isn't out there yet. But it's difficult. There's no real clear definitive path that you should take. Right? There's no rule book. Every situation is different.
Yeah, and different people have different levels of skin in the game. On various things. I got harassed about a Cullinan back in the day. That had been that was in a lot of groups, and I'd seen it posted, and I just so happened to be one of the people that they decided to call up. In fact, they called you. They called you and said, "Can I have Sam's phone number?" And you told them unfortunately, that is not public information, so you cannot have Sam's phone number.
It's not as public as pictures of your Cullinan.
And then someone else, you know who you are, gave them my phone number, and I got a very irate phone call, but. They were sort of they got it wrong in the terms of even just how they spoke to me, how they were dealing with me. It was very much like that one person who's now not working for the company was like, you need to do exactly what I say, blah, blah, blah. You signed this agreement, all this sort of stuff. No, I didn't. I'm just, at this point in time, I'm just Joe Blogs.
I've had a car company as well. I filmed something that was kind of half out, half not out. It had been shown, but I made a full video with one, etc., etc. And I had exactly the same experience where I got a very angry phone call saying there's a contract that says you're not allowed to film this, and I'm like, what?
Yeah.
I've had it more than once. I had a great one time. I got to work out what I can say here. A car that was at an event, but not yet available to media. But being the guy walking around with the camera with a pass to be there, I was allowed to be there, but it wasn't yet fully released. It was only kind of pictures of it had been released rather than fully released.
Yeah.
And I obviously made a video and put it straight on the internet, which did 1 million views or something.
Yeah.
And exactly the same. The company was like, you're not allowed to do this. It's not out yet. Like, well, yes, it is. You had one in public. I'm not the only person who made a video of it. I'm just the one that's smart enough to have made the video and put it on YouTube.
You're invited me to an event. You put the car there, and you know I film stuff. What do you expect?
Yes, but not a just to clarify, not like a private one manufacturer behind closed doors event, a public event, like somewhere anybody could go type event.
Oh, okay.
So
that's
like
so rogue.
This is weird.
Because that does happen occasionally. The TVR, the new TVR, which who knows whether that will appeared at some, unknown. I remember seeing it at an event, like driving around, and it hadn't been at anything. There was actually nothing about it other than there was the car.
There hasn't been very much marketing behind the car in general. It was launched at the Goodwood Revival, I want to say in 2017, September 17. I mean, I had gone as a depositor to a preview about 6 months before. they showed it static then, but after that, they only, like you say, they weren't announcing things. The car just appeared like it was being driven around by directors and whatnot, and occasionally going to Sunday morning gatherings and stuff. So yes, it wasn't kind of, it never had a formal dynamic debut. It just kind of popped up.
And then nowadays we seem to see it. We see it more often. Well, I don't know whether we see it more often or not than before, but you'll get customers will have cars before press.
Yes,
So presumably this is another problem, another minor headache.
Yeah, so this is the one that I had that I was just talking about. They delivered customer cars, and I've had this a lot in the recent times, because especially during the 12 months so far of fewer events happening and travel restrictions and so forth, media events have been postponed quite significantly, yet manufacturers are still building cars and sending them to customers. So things like Huayra Roadster BCs and Bugatti Divos and McLaren Speedtails and McLaren 620R and all sorts of different things are landing in the hands of customers before the manufacturer has done any media activity with the car officially, which means that you do then end up with this slightly funky world of the cars are there, somebody owns it, why not? And but similarly on this, from my side, I get a lot of these opportunities. The latest one is Elvas. McLaren have delivered some customer Elvas.
Yeah.
None of the first customers have yet done anything with them, but they delivered Elvas and they've not done any media activities. And in fact, you might have seen the recent hubbub that happened with drag times with the Elva.
Yeah, that was
which
weird.
was a funny situation. That was a factory car as it happens, but anyway, customers have cars. So, I mean, maybe I've done a video with one by the time of this, but I haven't at this point of recording done a video with an Elva. But there have been no official media opportunities, yet customers have cars. So why not go drive one?
Yeah, and you've got, if it's a customer car, there are no ties to anything. Not that a video you're going to do of anything is going to be remotely like too controversial or anything like that, but if it's a customer car, it's their car. They can decide what on earth they want to do with it, unless you're from a certain manufacturer or certain manufacturers.
Yeah, I hear that's a thing. I in 2021 so far, a manufacturer has blocked me from driving something.
Why? I don't understand the reasoning.
Don't do it. Well, they don't get the opportunity to prepare the car, right?
Yeah.
They don't get the opportunity to give you a car that may or may not be normal. I'm not mentioning any names.
We can talk about that at some other time.
Yeah, that one's going offline.
So you were in the UK for a while, then you were in Germany, then you went to Dubai, which is a lovely sunny place, and then you went over to America, and you've been in America for a while.
Yeah.
What's it like? One, it seems like you've come across some obscene car collections and been able to go out and drive some absolutely bonkers things. What's it like filming and recording and stuff in America versus Europe or even the UK? Is it a bit different? Or
So social media in general is so much more open in the US for two reasons. Firstly, more people have an understanding of what it is. If you're walking around with a camera, somebody says, "Oh, you're a YouTuber." Whereas if you walk around with a camera in London, someone's like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah.
It's a completely different mentality. And the result of that is a few-fold as well. It means that people are more open to the concept of sharing things in America, but there's also a very different culture. And particularly when it comes to very expensive assets like hypercars, there's more a culture of supporting somebody who has something like that, as opposed to the European, more jealous attitude. In America, if you see somebody, fueling up a Bugatti at a gas station, sorry, got to get it right.
Yeah.
The person will probably say, "Oh my gosh, nice car. What do I need to do? Inspire me. Give me some reason. How do I work so hard to get to that position?" Whereas in Europe, the response will be something along the lines of, "You're not paying your taxes," or, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
It will be some completely different approach. So there's a very different attitude from car collectors as a direct result of that, in terms of what they're willing to share and how much they're willing to be part of it themselves. The majority of the people who own crazy expensive cars that I film with in the US want to be part of it. Whereas in Europe, very rarely, very few people who own seven-figure cars in Europe would want to be in a video. just a completely different mentality. So it's a place I love spending a lot of time. I mean, creating English language content in the first place, obviously the largest audience is the United States of America. The population is 6 times the UK, 5 times the UK, whatever it is. And I get that in my stats. There's a slightly higher UK bias, but my US viewership on YouTube is like 32% to 11% in the UK. So I've always kind of harnessed approaching an American audience in the way that I create my content, which, I'm British, and British people might expect more British focused content, and it is very different, even down to the way you present things. If you've watched American documentaries or TV shows, things will be repeated more frequently and they'll go back over things. It's just a different style, very different style of creating content, even down to how adverts work. Americans don't get upset by adverts. Europeans hate adverts. Europeans hate the idea of a sponsored shout in a video because, oh my gosh, you must be making some money. Whereas in America, it's like, oh, this is cool. You're doing something exciting and you're making some money. Congratulations to you. I'll support. Very different, very different. So I love being in America. In January 2020, before all hell broke loose, I actually managed to finally land my US work visa, which gives me permission to stay there. It's an extendable visa, but I could be there all year if I wanted to. Obviously, you have to pay taxes in the US as a result on American income. That's all very, very, very complicated. But my idea had been to spend a lot more of 2020 over in the US to make the most of this. But unfortunately, that wasn't possible, of course. So I find it a place that I just firstly much more enjoy filming because crazier things happen all the time, more last minute, just more exciting. But also it's so much more welcoming, so much more like just a nice place. One of the things I started trying to do a while back, and not that I focus on negative comments online, I'm sure you're the same as me, you're aware, but you don't try and highlight it, was I started trying to look more into who is being negative. Okay. And, negative comments are a tiny percentage overall, and we don't really engage in them, but they help you get a feeling for what are you doing wrong? What are you perhaps, what could you do better to make less people unhappy with what you're doing? And 90% of the negativity I receive is from accounts that are clearly in the UK. Okay. So 10% of my audience and 90% of my negativity. Wow. And I always find this fascinating from a mathematical point of view because that's just does not make sense at all. And, you can tell what country somebody's in because you just find a picture with either an outdoor location, street, so you can see a street sign or painted lines on the road, or with a car, you can see a registration. So it's very easy to tell where somebody is in the world. And that absolutely fascinates me because, it pushes me to want to spend more time in general away from the UK. Why would you want to be somewhere that's negative? And a lot of the negative I get around me, I've got various ideas for why it is. Being from the UK, there's it goes back a little bit to what I just said. People might, I guess, be annoyed that I'm off doing something that's quite cool or whatever it is. But it does upset me a fair amount because, we all like and are proud of where we grew up, where we're from, where we spend our time. So it's an annoying thing. But you go to the US, and like you said about driving some incredible cars, this year so far, I've been out in stupid stuff. Stupid stuff. I mean, I think this year I've been in a Veyron, a Chiron Pure Sport, a Devo, a Sian, a Sabre, a P1, another Sabre, a LaFerrari, 3 Huayra BCs, Jumeirah.
How was that? That's an interesting one.
Brain is like frazzled. The list is, and we're only a few months into the year. The Jumeirah that's running at the moment isn't the full production car, it's the kind of show car, so it's a gentle pace thing, but fun to sit in it and get that feel of a 4-seat mid-engine car with a very short overhang. You feel like you're in a 911 or something. You feel like you're right up towards the front of a mid-engine car, except there's comfortable seating for 4 and, as they proudly say, 8 cup holders, which I find relatively amusing. But that's actually a fun story alone because I've basically been chasing that car around the world. I filmed it in 4 different countries in the last 12 months. I mean, I even didn't include there Zonda R and Vulcan, casual. Casual. Yeah, like the list, I need to sit down and like rewind back myself and work out what on earth I've done.
Because I did the sort of pre-podcast scroll like through videos and photos and whatever, and just seeing like Well, and I have to say for Shmee150, it takes quite a long time, because for some people, just like scrolling back through the YouTube videos, there's so many bloody videos I've got to go back
every
through.
day.
Like, every day for 365 days. How do you feel about that space at the moment? The current crazy hypercar, top of the market end.
I mean, I find it incredible the number of cars that are arriving in that space. It's obviously grown substantially, even in the time I've been making YouTube videos. Back in 2010, if you wanted to spend $1 million, let's say, on a car, what did you have as a choice? A Veyron?
Yeah.
Was there anything else in 2010? I don't know, not really, not much. Now, if you want to spend $1 million on a car, you've got about 40 options, some of which may never come to into fruition, some of which are significantly delayed, and many of which are out there, but not so many of which have a reason to be or a purpose. They're just a business, because the car world has ballooned in recent years. I recently drove the Lamborghini Sian, which I thought was quite an interesting car. I think visually, it's everything a Lamborghini could ever be. It's crazy dramatic and totally in your face, which is insane. And it's a little bit of a technology demonstration as well for them. The supercapacitor setup that slightly hints towards the, I guess, next generation of Lamborghini's V12 as they head after emissions targets, etc., etc. But it's also nothing like the emotion of, a LaFerrari that I drove a few weeks before. It's silenced thanks to regulations. So when you turn it on in Strada mode, it's pretty quiet and meh. And just nothing like the passion of cars even not that long ago. And, when Ferrari follow up the LaFerrari, let's say, and that's due in the next year or two, they're doing a track hybrid, limited hypercar, I believe. Guesswork here.
Possibly.
Possibly,
I've seen
maybe.
some mules.
I can guarantee it will be savagely fast, but it won't be as emotional to drive as a LaFerrari, I'm sure. I'm sure it would be an incredible car, like an absolutely incredible car. But there's a bit more to it. So I think the space we're in right now is one of, to me, a car needs to have a purpose, i.e. the AMG 1. It has the most winning Formula 1 engine in a road car. There's a direct purpose. Or the new Toyota GR Supersport that they're making, that we've seen the concept, which is effectively the winning Le Mans engine of the last 3 years in the new hypercar class car, which will be a very limited run homologation. Those kind of cars, I think, while they might not have the same emotion, they have a connection to the motorsport and they'll have a history intrinsically linked to them forever. But I really think that cars like the Gordon Murray T50 are going to stand out. And I've not seen the T50 up to this point, because it's not created to chase crazy lap times or these numbers that have just got into some territory that's irrelevant. It's created to be an exciting thing to drive. And that's something that a lot of the world has been missing recently. And when a lot of companies have been going into, let's make more expensive cars, whatever we can make, when McLaren have released the Senna, for example, and then the Speedtail, and then the Sabre, and whoever else is doing whatever they're doing. One thing I think Ferrari absolutely nailed was introducing the Monza, because the Monza is, it's a $1.5 million car, but it's a car they didn't try and make a stupidly fast car. They tried to make a car that will be a lot of fun. Yeah. It's different. And everyone copied them. McLaren with the Elva, sorry, I missed the Elva, and then Aston with the V12 Speedster, and then I don't know who else is chopping off the roof of a car to make one, but the Monza was the first to do that, not including the SLR Sterling Moss. Obviously, that was a decade before. But the Monza doesn't chase numbers, it just chases awesomeness. And it is. I think the T50 is similar. It doesn't chase numbers, it chases awesomeness. It chases, grabbing car people by the heartstrings, which is something that most of the new stuff is lacking. Yeah.
And like Ferrari, Lamborghini, reasonably being like this, like they know that, let's say, the Monza has to have an NAV12 in it.
Yeah.
And the experience of that car is, I haven't driven one, but I've seen one and I know what engine's in it. And I can have an idea of what it's going to be like. But like,
it's everything you think it's going to be and some more. Incredible car. One of my favorite cars I've ever driven.
Whereas the other versions of that sort of format, I look at and go, I'm sure that will be kind of incredible and crazy, but they don't have that engine. They might have more power, more torque, more, but they won't have the same fizz.
Yeah, Ferrari find themselves, I believe, in quite a unique position with the new homologations because they are effectively independent, as opposed to Lamborghini under Audi under the VW group or whatnot. So they have a lot more freedom to continue with their existing engines. So I'm still hopeful that we'll see the V12 engine continuing into even the 812 GTO successor. The next 812. Please, please, please. I don't want that engine to ever end. But it's such a big part of the car. And like I say, when I drove the Monza for the first time, I had a 2-hour run on an early morning empty roads in the Dolomites. We left at 7 a.m. It was fantastic. Chasing Mr. Powerslide Lover in his LaFerrari Aperta, it was even better. Like, I can't believe I'm saying that. Pinch.
Yeah.
Driving a Monza SP2 up mountain roads in Italy early in the morning when they're empty behind a LaFerrari Aperta, 2 V12s screaming. But no, it's a really, really big part of the emotive connection. And I think one of the things electric cars do is kind of make the numbers game irrelevant. The fact that a Tesla Model S Plaid is going to do a quarter mile faster than any combustion engine car, 765 LT included, the current kind of fastest traditional supercar. It's a big, heavy saloon car, and it's faster off the line or in a drag race. It kind of takes away a chase for numbers. And if we're no longer chasing numbers from a car that you take out for a Sunday drive, you've got to chase something else. You've got to be chasing the smiles.
Yeah.
And that isn't a car that does 2,000 horsepower and whatever.
No, absolutely not. And I've been talking about this exact thing a little bit. Like, you can't, the guy that goes and buys his car because it's at a Nurburgring lap time, or it's 0 to whatever 125 is X time. If there is a Tesla family vehicle with 7 seats that will do it faster, you have to go somewhere else. You can't.
Yeah.
You just have to just ignore those stats. They don't count anymore.
The thing is, there's no measurable metric for fun.
No.
You and I know that a Cayman GT4 with a manual box on an English countryside road is probably about as good as you're going to get. Like, small, nimble, nice power. But there's no metric to be able to say that the car is built so well. Or I'm trying to think, like, other examples. Even a Lotus, for example. Very hard to get a Lotus to win on a top trumps sheet because it won't beat most stuff you try and put it up against. But fantastic cars to drive across the range. There's just no way of giving a car an official, independently agreed rating for how much fun it is.
Yeah.
I mean, there are magazine reviews, but it's not quite, or YouTube reviews even, it's not quite the same. It's not the same as, the top speed is this and the 0 to 60 is this.
Yeah, and most of the buyers of these cars are not like us or whatever, chasing that driver engagement situation. It's like, what's the latest, coolest, greatest? I'm sure that's not everything people are looking for, but a lot of cars do get sold on that.
But what is the definition of coolest? Because coolest, especially over the last, let's say, 15 years, has been cars getting noisier and making more flames.
Yes.
But that's gone. So what's coolest now?
Yeah, looking mad. Looking mad does a lot. Like the Aventador proved that. Like, looks and sounds mad, sells a lot of cars, even if it doesn't drive that well. But like, it delivers an experience and was expensive, so people know it's expensive. But yeah, I don't know. Like, I don't understand. I think the manufacturers they're in a really tricky place, obviously, because there are people at all of these firms that love driver involvement, like cars, a great experience, but they have to be able to jump through the hoops, whether it's making an electric car or whatever. And like, I don't think if you could give me a 500 horsepower, 1100 kilo car with a manual gearbox that revved to the 9 or something, like, that's it, job done. I don't need any more than that.
Yeah,
that'd be amazing.
Yeah, older stuff will come through more now, for sure. I think I'm sure it is a generational thing, and this is because of like mine or our age. But I feel like everything up to the SLS Black Series was epic, and everything newer is struggling.
Yeah.
You know, the early 2000s, the 1990s, early 2000s Carrera GTs, like there have been so many epic cars in that period, whereas the new stuff has all become so much chasing numbers. I think it's going to be really interesting to see what happens in 5 to 10 years when we see the lag of what's happened now coming through to what's actually being delivered and built. You know, everybody putting the brakes on a little bit, and rare will become rare again, and because it becomes rare, perhaps it can get more back to what you and I like.
Yeah, possibly. I don't know. We'll have to see. We'll see. My sort of view of what I'm looking at. I've driven all sorts of things. A lot of slow, underpowered things recently, which was quite fun.
Yep.
Like Fiesta ST Edition. I really enjoyed that. Yaris, that was fun. Those sorts of things. That's like sort of shifted my perspective a little bit. But I spend a lot of time looking at older cars and go, oh yeah, this car from the 90s or whatever. But then you get in a modern car and I'm like, I do really like modern cars. Like I love the fact that like cruise control and all of these things. So I don't necessarily want to live in old cars all the time. Like I would like a modern car that ticks all the boxes that I might be getting from some older cars.
Yeah, what you need is a combination, right? You need a fully autonomous electric vehicle that gets you around your daily commute, and then you need a purist car that you can still drive that has a nice engine.
Yeah.
You know, a manual V12.
A manual V12, exactly. You sold your GTC4, so you don't have a V12 anymore.
I do not currently have a V12. Currently,
okay.
It will happen again.
It will
soon.
happen again.
Yeah.
Before they disappear forever.
Yeah, well, I'm going down the V10 path for the minute. I have a lot of V8s. I seem to have an obsession with V8s. It's not really intentional, but I just seem to gravitate towards them.
How are you finding your American car? You've got a few American cars. That's not specific enough.
The GT500.
The GT500.
Yeah, I can't wait to have it over in Europe. It's going to be a stupid thing to drive around London. It's huge, desperately inefficient, and it's bright green and loud.
Nice.
It's like the worst possible car to cruise around the centre of London in. I don't think I'll ever drive it in the centre of London.
Is it right-hand drive?
No, left-hand drive. They're all
left-hand drive.
left. Yeah.
How was it in the States? Because you've done a lot of driving around in it.
Yeah, I did 7,500 miles in like 5 weeks.
That is good going.
So 5 or 6 weeks or something. It's been great. You know, over there, the fuel isn't a problem because gas is like a third the price of Europe, which helps. American formula, right? They tend to be softer than European cars. Seats tend to be softer. Ride is softer. GT500 has an incredible breadth of ability with the MagneRide suspension. When you put it into track, it's really firm. If you put it in its dedicated drag strip mode, it gets so soft it's funny. Because obviously, if you think about the car, it's rear seat delete, so there's no weight at the back whatsoever. And there's a massive lump up front. So for the drag strip mode, it fully softens up everything. And the result of that is that if you try and go around a corner with the car set for drag strip, it literally feels like something from the 60s that's just not put together right. It just wallows everywhere, which is hilarious to experience. But then when you go into track mode, and I had a track day back a bit with Billy Johnson, who was involved in the development work of the GT500, but he also raced the 4GTs at 24 Hours of Le Mans. So safe to say he knows a thing or two behind the wheel. And being passenger riding with him, both the fast way and then the very fast sideways way, was quite a spectacular experience because it's really fast. And I cannot wait to get the GT500 over here to do a back-to-back with my 4GT and GT500 on track somewhere.
Yeah.
I think it will be... I don't want to say that my much cheaper car is equally fast, but I honestly think it will be, like, similar.
Yeah.
It's so fast. It's very easy with a European perspective to dismiss American cars, and I think a lot of people do. Some of them are really good. Like, the GT500 is really good. Yeah, the interior is a bit plasticky, and yeah, having carbon fiber wheels on a car that already weighs, like, nearly 2,000 kilos is completely stupid. But you do not think a car like that should haul as fast as it does.
So what horsepower is that car?
760.
That's
760, but it gets it down. It's a 7-speed dual clutch. The gearbox feels very like a Porsche PDK gearbox.
Okay.
It's lightning fast, very, very, very effective, and obviously sounds incredible because it's hooked up to a supercharged V8. So American noise and lots of noise. I wonder if I have to get it muffled to import it. I don't even know. It's so loud.
Is it a complicated process to bring it over?
No, it's not that complicated. It's a private import, and the UK is the land of kit cars and weird track stuff like aerials and BACs and Caterhams. So getting a fairly civilized road car like a Mustang is not that complicated. The fact that it's readily available to put on European headlights and taillights, because obviously American car, it has red indicators, blinkers, as opposed to amber. So it's easy to swap those, I believe, everything that you need to do, and then it just has to go through the usual set of checks that who is it that does it? Is it Vosa that they go through, and then sign it all off? So it'll be fun. I'll make it when the time comes to do it. I'll make a video about that. I've been kind of waiting to see, because if I can get back to the US again soon, I'll go and continue the tour with the GT500. But if I can't, I'll just say to the guys who are looking after it in Miami, let's stick it on a boat. Let's get it to London.
Yeah, why not? I mean, lots of reasons why not, but yeah.
It'll be fun. I think it'll be
fun.
Fun first and foremost to have done all the miles and stuff that I've done with the car in the USA, and then to have it in the garage in London.
Yeah, absolutely. In the new place amongst all of the other toys.
Yeah.
I asked my audience for some questions for you, and I got a couple in. Would you swap your G-Wagon for a Defender?
No, not even when they make the V8. Not the biggest fan.
Fair enough.
It does the job. It does the job, but it's just not for me. A G-Wagon is a G-Wagon. It's so iconic, and I like the Mercedes family of cars and the way it feels a lot.
Yeah, and if you're towing a Mercedes with a Mercedes, great.
Yeah, I don't know why, because I guess on paper, being British, I should like a Defender. I never really grew to the old Defenders. The new Defender has made me like the old Defenders more.
Yeah, I think I'm the same, because the old ones, I always just thought they looked cool, but they were crap. Yeah, and everyone can disagree with my opinion. One is just, but the new one's just
a really good. It's a really good road car. It ticks a lot of boxes. It does everything, but it's huge. It's absolutely gigantic. You can't get it into a lot of garages. Couldn't get it in my garage at home.
Oh,
it's
really?
taller than a G. Yeah.
Oh, because it's too tall.
Yeah. Oh. I don't know if there's like a lowering options or whatever. I didn't.
It probably is, but you wouldn't want to. You wouldn't want to have it down to get out.
Yeah, I haven't looked into it, because obviously I'm not interested in buying one at this stage. But it just doesn't scream to me in the same way.
Someone said they'd love to see some more affordable performance car content from you, and they like M2 or RS3 was a question. I guess maybe that was like a M2 or RS3. Which would you choose? But of those two, would you choose either of those?
M2 or RS3? So we're talking, what, 50 grand's worth? I've made many videos with my Focus RSs over the last couple of years, and I have the GR Yaris. Obviously, it's not featured, but primarily my channel has always been the supercar, hypercar stuff. Yes, I love to throw in bits of fun here and there, but I think it's a channel, how do I describe, content structure type thing. It's more supercar focused and hypercar focused. I think M2 versus RS3 or that price point, I mean, the closest I came to was the A45S. And there are things about the A45S that aren't fantastic, but there are many things that are. M2s, I've never really completely gelled with.
Having had the M2, the bit about the M2 that annoyed me was it was a 2 Series. Not in like a name type situation, just like you get in an M3 and the interior is like a lot nicer, and it's got adaptive ride and all that sort of stuff, which the 2s have never had. But
I think that's what I like so much about the A45S. The interior is the full MBUX, screens, nice seats, top equipment. Yeah, and
that one almost started at the A, didn't it? Well, I guess was it in an S before it then went into the A class?
That MBUX system came in the A class before, because even my G-Wagon doesn't have it. The G launched like a few months before the A. So it's funny that, the big flagship £150,000 beast doesn't have something that your like £30,000-40,000 hatchback has. Oh well. it's a branding thing, right? It's how these cars come out and how the structures work. I've learned so much about that over the years, about how, take the Mercedes AMG Panamericana vertical grille at the front. For the facelift E-Class, they just put that onto the E63, right? Because the E63 came out a few weeks before the GTR, where that launched.
Right.
So although internally, I'm pretty sure, don't have this for fact, but internally I'm pretty sure they had planned the E63 to have that grille.
Yeah.
Because the GTR's launch was delayed, the E63 couldn't launch with the grille.
Yeah.
So it was always the odd one of the family for the last 3 or 4 years because it was the only car that didn't have it.
Yeah. And it's weird looking back. You pick any point in time and you say, okay, I would like to buy a car of like X. You say you've got X budget. And you may find, like, if you'd asked me, that let's say, I don't know, A3 versus A4 or something like that, where you've got a slightly bigger up-the-range car. It could be E-Class, C-Class. But it depends when the facelift and the tech changes have happened can drastically alter how I feel about the two cars. Because if one's just had the change, or at the price point I'm looking at, you can have the change, and one doesn't, often the lower down car can feel nicer than the one above.
Yep.
Just because of the drastic
timing.
Just completely different inside. Someone else said, you decided to not buy a 765 LT. And how do you feel about that car now? Like whatever it is, a year after it's been launched. Do you feel differently?
I don't think so. I expected it to be a phenomenal car. I think it is a phenomenal car. I've driven a couple of them on track and drag, and it's very, very, very fast. I decided not to buy one primarily because I have 2 very similar McLarens in the garage already. I'm not selling my Senna and I'm not selling my 675 LT. So unless I wanted to become exclusively a McLaren collector, what's the point? Put it this way. I mean, effectively, you could say I bought the Hurricane STO, which is coming later this year, instead of a 765. And I think that if you look at my whole garage, it's the same money. It adds a lot more to put a V10 first Lambo in the garage than a third similar McLaren.
Yeah.
If it was more different to the Senna, yes, sure. But it's got the same seats, the same dashboard, the same engine, the same tub in many ways. Like, it would not make much sense.
Yeah. Yeah, you've got the Senna, which is above.
The Senna is like the 765 LT
Yeah.
that just came out first.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And then the follow-up to that was, do you see any more McLarens in the future? Unknown.
I mean, they obviously have a lot of cool stuff coming. I'm sure at some point I will. For the moment, I feel like, I've been lucky to own 5 different McLarens, 12C, 650, 675 Coupe, 675 Spider, Senna. Go through waves. I've got a bit of a Ford wave recently and then a bit of an AMG wave at the moment, I guess. But I like more variety. So until something dramatically changes in the next generation. But I also think of it from a personal enjoyment point of view, driving the cars, but also as well from a value and a content point of view, and what would spending that money on that car add to both my car collection, but also the Shmee150 channel. And a 765 wouldn't add a lot. If I was going to do a ton of drag racing, yeah, sure, because it would go and dominate everything. But that's still not really what that car's been introduced for. Like, it's a lot of money. These cars, they add up.
Yeah, with an absolutely unknown depreciation curve.
Yes, well, it's not going to be pretty.
It's not going to be optimum. It's not going to go up in the short term.
Generally now with my cars, like we talked about, when I go into a car, I know if I'm going to keep it or not, and I'm not going to go into a 765 expecting to keep it. And if I'm not going to keep it, what's the point in sinking £200,000 in 2 years in a car?
Yeah,
like enough to go and buy outright an 812 Superfast now, lost in depreciation in 2 years. Like, it's not my idea of fun.
Yeah. And one of those has got a V12 in it. And you would have it at the end.
And that's outright, not the depreciation.
Would you get another Clio in memory of your original Clio?
Watch this space.
Watch this space. Is there a space for a Clio in the garage?
Yes, there's a space well and truly reserved and marked out for it. I don't know by now if it might have happened, but if it hasn't happened yet, it's going to happen very soon.
Yeah, cool.
It's marked.
Watch the space. Do you have a favourite resto mod? Have you driven any of the resto mods?
Not really. I'm trying to think. I've not really spent any time around, Singers or many of the kind of restored Porsches. I did drive a Keen Project 911 Safari recently.
How was that?
Awesome fun. I mean, we were off-roading, like making a splash and drifting it in the dirt. It was great. exactly what it was built for. That was at a place called the Brumos Collection in Jacksonville in Florida, they were really, really, really nice, wonderful place to visit. I could imagine myself wanting like a resto mod Mustang, 60s Mustang, but modern. That'd be the kind of thing that would be up my street, probably. I don't know. I tend to be more of the opinion that if you want an old car, it should be the old car.
Okay, because you have various different variations. I guess the main ones are all like super expensive, multiples of the original car price tag. But then I guess you get like my 911. It's just got the sound system, aircon. That's about it.
Yeah.
And, some stuff like that.
I mean, that's like me having the old Mini that I had was a last year of production Mini.
Yeah.
So similarly, and I had a few things installed, cigarette sockets and whatever else. Same kind of theory, right? I can see that, that kind of thing for sure. It's a funny space. Like you say, the prices on lots of those kind of projects are really, really high. And that's triggered because of the investment value of the originals. They're often based on cars that have skyrocketed in price as a way of more, people spending more money because the original now costs however much. Don't know. It got me thinking. I'm not really sure if there's one that would stand out to me.
Have you been to GTO Engineering?
No, but I've seen your video.
That's
and yeah,
it's a good car.
I should try it. I should probably try it.
You should definitely.
Will it be an expensive visit?
And I don't think you would buy one, but I think you would definitely enjoy driving it.
Enjoy it, yeah.
And it is exactly what it is, but it's also an old car. Like that is not a new car in any way, other than it's new. So I've just said a whole bunch of things.
That was totally logical.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, well, last time you were here, we did 5 questions. Since you've answered those 5 questions, you can have some of them again. 5 car garage.
Oh gosh. Do I have a price limit?
Unlimited.
Yeah, well then I just go hypercar, right?
Would you actually do that?
Well, no, because then you've got nothing to lug stuff around with.
See, here we go. Gets interesting.
Based on the current time, or let's say this year, you've got to have something fairly practical. So I'd probably have to go still with my G-Wagon, or whatever next year's G-Wagon will be. They'll make a hybrid one.
Yeah.
G73 or G63E or whatever they call it.
One more
of those.
MPG.
800 horsepower, totally unnecessary. Sounds perfect.
Yeah.
I mean, mine basically is anyway, so we'll have one of those. I do think that, modern world needs an EV, and I think the Taycan Turbo S is right up there. Maybe we can have a Sport Turismo, because that'll be new. I'm starting at the less interesting end. I'm going to have to throw in my favourite car, which is the Ferrari F50. Talk about it way too much, but that's my, ultimate of cars that exist from the past. What else do we have? Well, we've basically got 2 kind of dailies there, so we can be a bit silly now. We have something modern, super Grand Tourer-y. The 812 GTO, don't even know what it is. GTO, TDF, Versione Speciale, whatever it is. Don't even know what it is.
Very, very fast.
But it will be epic. The hardcore new 812. That's on the list. That's on the dream list. And then let's throw in a modern hypercar. Let's probably throw in... I'm a bit tied. I'm tied between T50 or AMG 1.
Oh.
I think if I've gone with the manual V12 and the F50, I'm going to go with AMG 1. Tech Tour de Force.
Yeah. Then you've got
AMG 1, F50, 812 GTO, G73, and a Taycan Turbo S Sport Turismo.
That's a good garage.
Totally unnecessary. I didn't really have much old stuff. You'd probably have something old. I probably should have had a 300 SL or something. Oh, I don't know. Dreamland.
It's tough. And then a spin on this is someone suggested. He suggested a few iterations, and I've completely forgotten what all of them were. But was essentially if you could only have 5 of your cars, which would you have?
Ford GT, SLS Black, and then if we're still trying to keep a rounded garage, it has to be the G and the Taycan.
Yeah.
And then we need something else, which would take the other spot. Who's getting the 5th spot? I'm trying to avoid, just because it's expensive, saying the Senna, because that's not how this game should work.
Yeah.
I don't want to say the GT Black, because that's a little bit too similar, even though it's not what I would consider a forever type thing, but GT4, which is now there.
Oh, okay. Right, yes. Yes, there is a GT4.
It's not here at the time we're recording, but it is here at the time of this.
It'll be there. Yeah.
There's manual, right? We're going to throw one manual in.
Yeah.
Can't have a garage without a manual.
It's quite a good game to do that one when you go, and I sort of try and go, okay, but if you could only have 2 cars, or You know, if you were going to sell everything and buy 2 cars, what would you do? And I pontificate on that one forever and ever.
But if you told me I could only have 2 cars, they probably wouldn't be 2 that I actually own.
Yes.
That's
Owning
the weird
cars
one.
makes that question tricky.
Because something like I wouldn't have a G as my daily if I didn't have a lot of other stuff.
Yeah.
A G wouldn't be one of 2 for me. And I would have a Lusso back. I'd have a GTC4 Lusso back. That would be my practical car if I was only on a 2-car garage.
Yeah.
Weird.
It's a weird one, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's weird how that works. You go, if you could literally just liquidate all your cars for kind of what they're worth, not really losing too much up, down, whatever, like that, not thinking about that side too much, and then you've got the same number of slots. Okay, you've got a lot of slots, but if you're like, you can have 4 again, what would you choose? And it's often not the same.
No, completely. I mean, even now, it makes me think that the price I paid for the Senna, for example, buys me an 812 GTS, an SF90, and has some change. It's crazy when you start thinking about like that kind of perspective as well.
I very much feel like that about the F40. Like, I don't drive it that much. I know what it's worth, and I go, well, if I sold it, you're like, well, I could have one of them, and one of them, and one of them,
one of those, and one of those, and one of those, and have a 6-figure sum left.
Yeah.
Like, strange world.
What are you doing, you crazy person? But this is the joy of cars. If you could only drive one car for the rest of your life, and you've got a £500 Clio or Passat or whatever on the side,
it's really difficult. You drive one car, probably an 812. And the 812 is so phenomenal. I should probably get one. I keep talking about them and I don't even own one. They're coming down to affordable prices. I need the 812 to be at a price point where if I buy one, I can actually drive it without living in fear of the depreciation.
That's tricky, isn't it? It's like, when is that?
Yeah, I mean, I was fairly good on that with my Lusso. I had my Lusso for about 2 years. I lost a sizable whack on it, as you'd expect, but it was exactly in line with what I expected it would do when I bought it. So maybe we're getting there with 812s. Need to wait a little bit longer.
And how old was the car that you bought?
I bought one that was 2 years old, and I sold it at 4 years old.
Yeah, it's tricky. It's tricky, those cars, because you look at them, like GTC4, they're like, wow, that's obviously a very sick car. And then you look at FFs, where they're at now, and you go, well, will they get to where FF's at, or will they never get to where FFs are at?
Who knows? This thing always comes down to how many did they actually make and how many people want them, hey?
And how many miles have all of the ones that are for sale have done? They've all done like 5,000 miles, even if they're 40 years old.
Yeah, that's the problem with an 812. I know if I buy an 812, I'm doing 10,000 miles in a year with it.
And then you've got...
If I want to sell it, goodbye.
Something like that, an 812 specifically at the moment, like you're kind of going, I want to keep this for a long time.
I think you've got to go into it with a fairly longer term commitment. I would love to spec a new one and go wild and do a specification that has no resale value. But that's a bit of a bite of a brave pill.
Yeah. And a lot of people have spec'd 812s and lost obscene amounts of money in a year.
Oh, yeah. 100k in a year, for sure.
Which is insane.
Yeah. People talk about horrible McLaren depreciation, but they've forgotten what V12 Ferraris do.
Yeah. What is the most undervalued car at the moment?
If you'd asked me that like 2 years ago, I know what my answer would be because I had numerous chats with people about them and it was completely right. And it was the Bugatti EB110. Because you could pick up one a few years ago for about 500,000 and now $1 million plus. So, I completely called that was going to be the way and wish I'd had the cash to buy one off the record and sell it. I mean, I think the next big growth, which has started, but I think will continue dramatically, is going to be the 90s GT1 cars. I mean, even in the time, like when I drove a CLK GTR about 2 years ago, at the time, I think I had in my head it was a $3 million car, and that would now be a $7 million car. Yeah. Which is kind of crazy. Obviously, Zondas are flying. Yeah. I wouldn't say Zondas are undervalued because at like $7 million, they're definitely not undervalued for a 760 or 4 or 5 million for an F or something. But I do think that is on its way to being a $20 million car. So if that's our definition of undervalued, you probably need to get in a Zonda before they get stupid.
I remember talking about this.
Yeah, we talked a lot when they were like 1 million, didn't we?
Ago. Yeah. They were like 1, and I think Is it? Super Futura had one for like 1.2 that was just never selling.
Yeah, mad. That it was a white F, wasn't it, for 1.2?
Yeah.
You'd sell that easily for 5 now.
which is crazy. The thing is, they're damn expensive now, and yeah, they're going up. Yeah, it's an interesting space. That the GT1 cars, I would have loved to have owned a Porsche GT1. Like,
yeah,
the 996
but there are not very many.
Is the sickest one, but the 993 I would totally have. And yeah, those cars, you're in the double-digit numbers and low, and you see them on the street, and you're like, well, that is a lot cooler than anything. We might see this again, though, with these Le Mans hypercar, whatever they're called.
Yep, the hypercar class. You know, the Toyota, as we talked about, and the Glickenhaus, and a couple of others entering.
I saw that, and I thought that looked pretty damn cool. It'd be interesting to watch that space. I can't wait. Happens.
I mean, a lot of manufacturers that were interested have postponed or cancelled, you know, Aston Martin, Porsche, etc. Yeah. So we'll have to see how it develops, but I think it has a lot of potential for people like us to enjoy.
Those will be the last ones, like they're going to be. Big V12s. So there's not going to be anything. 10 years' time, there will be no cars like that being made. Unlikely.
No. Well, that series will hopefully still exist, but in a different way.
Yeah. Right, final question. Most interesting car to you at the moment?
Like, to me personally, or?
Yeah. What are you Googling? What are you auto-trading? What are you looking up?
Not necessarily the most expensive things. I spent a fair bit of time searching for 2005 or 2006 Ford GTs.
What are they at now?
In pounds, 250-ish. I mean, I have my Ford thing going on, right? New GT, GT500, Focus RS. I'd love to get like a 60s Mustang at some point. So a 2005 Ford GT. Yeah, that'd be a good plan. 2005 Ford GT would be a nice addition. So that's certainly one that I've been browsing for a lot. I'm trying to think what else I've been searching for. Got a few ideas in mind for future cars, but that's not so much searching, 'cause not looking for ones on the market.
They're cool.
Yeah. Very different drive to the new GT. Them and Carrera GTs. 2005 Ford GTs and same era Carrera GTs. Last manual mid-engine cars.
Yeah.
Like, not last manual mid-engine cars, GT4, etc., but last manual mid-engine proper supercar.
Yeah. Stupid engine, all that. It's a cool period. It's a cool time period. And I think everyone has this sort of bit, don't they? They look at their sort of childhood of cars and go, well, those were the coolest. And each generation does it. And I was talking to someone, Tristan, from The Market, so one of the online auction websites. And I was saying, like, age of cars, where's the sort of hump? And he was saying, he brought up the 50th anniversary of E-Type as an example. 50th anniversary of E-Type was almost like peak E-Type prices. And then 60th, they kind of just started slowing down again.
Too old.
And I thought that was quite an interesting marker for age of cars, and actually probably quite good in terms of when they reach peak cool.
For sure. Because people like you and I would take a McLaren F1 over a 250 GTO any day.
Any day.
Like, everyone of our age would take a McLaren F1 over a 250 GTO. I mean, I'm not trying to downplay the 250 GTO as an incredible car, but you do this with your history, and probably in 30 years' time, we'll take a Zonda over a 250 GTO.
Yes. And if you said you could buy a 250 GTO now for 50 million, or you can buy however many Zondas or
10
McLaren
Zondas.
F1s you can get for 50, 60 million, whatever this unknown price is for a 250 these days, I would go, yes, of course I will. Of course I will take that. And in 10 years' time, 20 years' time, I think you would have made an awful lot of money.
Yeah, if you put $50 million now into Zondas, cleaned up the market, and had everyone that was there.
Didn't someone do that?
Well, I know someone that is basically seeming to do that. My crazy friend Mike out in LA, he's becoming Pagani collector extraordinaire. He recently bought the Zonda R and a Zonda F, and has his Huayra BC and a Huayra Roadster. And I don't even know. I don't think it's ending there.
That's a mad bunch. What was the Zonda R like? What did you get to do with it? But that's one of those cars that was kind of super cool, but never really had a purpose.
Yeah, never really had a purpose because it's not a full race car. It's a gentleman's toy, but even as gentleman's toys go, it's not, let's say, the best because it wasn't built to be that. It was kind of made into that. It sounds stupidly cool, obviously. like the engine is the greatest thing in the world. It's
Yeah.
a 750 horsepower naturally aspirated 6-litre V12. It's pure automotive heaven. Unrestricted Inconel exhaust, etc., etc. But we went out to I went out to the track with Mike, and he's only done a couple of outings on track. He openly said he's just got to get into it, and fair credit to him for taking his car that he just bought and doing a couple of track laps with it, and driving it reasonably hard in the process. And the sound was just like heaven, absolute heaven. The plan had been for me to take the wheel afterwards, but unfortunately he had a little bit of a lock up and flat spotted the front tire. And this is where, let's say, race car, but not real race car necessarily, because full carbon fiber front clam, if we went and did some more laps on a heavily flat spotted tire, imagine if that shredded and exploded. You then tear off a 300,000 pound front carbon fiber clam. You can't take that risk. I'm not taking that risk. I'd love to have driven it, but that will have to wait until another day. But it's kind of crazy, because I was thinking it's a 12-year-old car, the Zondra. Doesn't feel like it's 12 years old.
No. You look at it now and like they just look unreal. Yeah. Imagine that. That is a car we need to see in Le Mans. Like I wouldn't imagine them doing very well, but if they made a Zonda whatever. But
this
GT1
is the problem,
car.
the cost prohibitive. I know the hypercar class, they're trying to cap costs so it doesn't spiral into that kind of... I think LMP1 was getting to 300 and something million a year in euros before everybody started bailing out of it. And even the hypercar class is going to be... I feel
20.
like it's 100 and something or 200 million or whatever. It's significant money. But a company like Pagani and Koenigsegg don't have that. That's only possible if a very wealthy billionaire customer client, wants to run the program.
Yeah.
Maybe that happens, but the development work and costs is just... It's, if you want to do it for 4 years, you're going to be spending the best part of $1 billion.
Yeah, I wonder how much Glickenhaus has spent.
Yeah, but he loves it. He's so fun. I don't know if you've ever met him.
That's ignoring he loves it. Obviously, he loves it. Like, he wouldn't be doing it if he didn't love it. But he's exactly done that. He's gone like, I'm building a car that I want to race, and maybe some people will buy it.
Have you ever met Jim?
I've never met him, no.
He is a great guy, crazy passionate, brilliant stories, always a delight to meet. I've been lucky to meet him in quite a few different places around the world, including on the streets of Washington, D.C. about a year and a half ago. I was literally just around the corner from the hotel I was staying at, and I saw the SCG parked outside, and he had been at an awards dinner inside, as it happens, complete coincidence. And he walked out, and I was like, oh, hey. No, really nice guy, and I mean, that's the definition of passion, right, for this.
Yeah.
To, go full on in the way that he does with his team.
Yeah, no, it's super cool. I love those sorts of projects and those sorts of things, like just for the passion of doing it, wanted to do it and keeps at it. Another guy a bit like that who I've spoken to recently, and I know you've met, David Dicker, roading cars down in New Zealand now. Like, just building something he wants to build the fastest track car on the planet. Yeah. And it sounds like they've done it. Like,
why not?
Yeah, very cool. Very cool. Well, there we go. We've made it to the end. Thanks very much for coming on.
Pleasure. Always great to chat cars and talk about what's going on in the world.
Yeah, no, it was good. It was very good. And, well, I don't know. I'll see you. I'll see you sooner than this, but back on the podcast at some point. But I don't imagine we'll do it in exactly 1 year, literally to the hour.
Well, if not, see you same time, same place next year.
Yeah, exactly. See what's happened in between. Cool. Well, thanks very much.
Pleasure. Thank you.